Hi friends, this is Alok, and since we are in the last week of the current tax regime, I thought that it is very important wherein we understand that from 1st of July, that is under the GST regime, what are the inputs which we will be eligible to get on our input expenses. And so I've created this short video which would address the specific issues with regard to the taking inputs on under the GST regime. So let us first understand the basics. So what does the law say? The law says that every registered person shall be subject to conditions and restrictions. We will discuss about those conditions and restrictions later. Be entitled to take credit of input tax charged on any supply of goods or services or both to him which are used or intended to be used in the course of his business, and said amount shall be credited to the electronic ledger. So what it basically means that if you have incurred any expenditure on which you have paid any GST, be it CGST, SGST, or IGST, then and you have used that services or goods for your purpose or for your business, then the input which you have paid, the tax which you have paid, will be directly credited to the electronic ledger, and which can be used to adjust with your output liability. So basically, we will pay taxes only on the differential amount, and in general all the input is allowable under the GST law. However, there are restrictions which we will discuss later in this video. So to understand, so हमने जो भी हम एक्सपेंस करते हैं फॉर बिजनेस के लिए, उस एक्सपेंस पे हम लोग कोई भी अगर जीएसटी पेमेंट कर रहे हैं, कोई भी इनपुट टैक्स पेमेंट कर रहे हैं, तो वो इनपुट टैक्स कैन बी एडजस्टेड, दैट इनपुट टैक्स कैन बी एडजस्टेड विद द आउटपुट GST or IGST or CGST. This is what the input tax, and this is the main benefit, the main crux of the implementation of GST. That is, there is a seamless transfer of inputs and adjustment, irrespective of whether it's a goods or services, irrespective of in which state we are operating from. So the general rule says that everyone would be allowable for all the inputs if those expenses are being used for business. However, and we will also note that what are the preconditions to claim input. There should be a tax invoice or debit note. The goods or the services is actually being received, the tax has actually been paid, so the other party has actually paid that, and in our case we have actually paid, and we have paid to our vendor, and that vendor has actually paid to the government, and prescribed returns has been filed, and in 180 days the payment has been made for that invoice. So that this is very important. So we would have made the payment of that invoice within 180 days maximum. On capital goods, there is a restriction that any input tax on which depreciation has been claimed, for that input tax there will be no input available under GST, and there is a limitation of that is by March, by the due date filing for the month of September next year. For example, for the financial year 17-18, by 20th of October we can claim the input. So these are the preconditions for claiming inputs. Now there are a lot of restrictions. So it doesn't though it seems that input of all the expenses will be allowed, but there are specific restrictions. For example, in case of motor vehicles and other conveyance, so if there are any GST which we have paid, for example, if we buy a car and which is being used for our business, but we are not in the business of further supply of cars, or we are not in the business of transportation of passengers, or we are not in the business of training. For example, a CA firm, for example, a legal firm like my legal firm, in my legal firm, if I buy a car and I pay GST on that, then since I'm not in the business of further supply of car or transportation or training, I will not get input of that GST. So that I have to capitalize. The second thing is food, beverages, outdoor catering, beauty treatment, health services, cosmetic, plastic surgery. These any expense, these kind of expenses will not be allowed as input unless and until the registered person is actually in the same category of goods or services, and use this as an element of taxable composite. For example, uh, 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 a consultant, a legal consultant, if they take services of a outdoor catering, they take services of a food and beverages and beauty treatment for their employees, then those inputs will not be available unless and until that registered person is also into the same nature of services. The second thing is membership of a club. So if I give membership to my employees for the gym, and I pay GST on that, this will also be not allowed. Very, very important. These are specific cases wherein the inputs will not be allowed. Then life insurance, health insurance, rent a cab. In this scenario, uh, there will be no input unless and until the government notifies any of the services which are obligatory for an employer to provide to his employees. So in these scenarios also it is not allowed. However, travel benefits extended to employees on vacation such as leave or home travel concession, these will be allowed. Under work contract services, if any input which is paid, any tax which is paid for construction of immovable property, this will not be allowed except plant and machinery. So only in case of plant and machinery, in case of construction of immovable property, the inputs will be allowed. Also, any goods or services received by a taxable person for construction of other than work contract, but there is a construction of immovable property, then only in case of plant and machinery the input will be allowed. Very, very important things. uh, Also, in composition scheme, inputs will be not allowed. A non-resident taxable person will not be allowed to get adjust input except if he imports something. On any taxes paid for personal consumption, inputs will not be allowed. Goods stolen, destroyed, written off, on all these scenarios, input will not be allowed. Also, if any tax paid to the government under section 74, 129 and 130, these are penal sections. These are penal sections wherein this is paid if uh, based on the any demand raised by the government. For example, section 74 deals with the erroneously refunded or any input tax credit wrongly availed. In those scenarios, not allowed. Or section 129 deals with detention, seizure, release of goods, and section 130 deals with the confiscation of goods or conveyance or levy of penalty. In these scenarios, inputs will not be allowed. So I thought that it is very important that since GST is coming from next week, in fact this week only, it is very important to understand what are the specific scenarios wherein the inputs will not be allowed. Let's just revise once again. Input will not be allowed for any GST on motor vehicles and other conveyance. Input will not be allowed for food and beverages, outdoor catering, beauty treatment, health services, cosmetic, plastic surgery, unless and until the registered person is also making an outwards taxable supply of the same category of goods and services, or membership of health, fitness center, rent, cab, life insurance, health insurances, unless until it's specifically notified by the government, or it is for travel concession to hometown. Work contract only under plant and machinery it will be allowed. Other than work contract, only plant and machinery in case of capital goods. Thanks for watching this video. Composition scheme not allowed. uh, Non-residents will not be allowed unless and until there are any taxes on goods imported. Personal consumption obviously not allowed. In case of disposed of goods lost, not allowed. So these are the specific conditions wherein the input will be not allowed under the GST regime. So thanks for watching this video, and do write to me, or you can WhatsApp me, you can email me if you have any specific queries on the inputs, and we will be more than happy to answer. Thanks for watching this video.